Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the June 22nd Regional Commission meeting. Thank you to our Fauquier commissioners and Mr. Butler and also Mr. McCullough for hosting here at the airport. This place is fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. Anyway, do we have a
of course, one thing I forgot about. So.
We'll pretend there's a flag.
Yeah, gotta be a flag in there somewhere.
I don't know. They don't have a flag. I know, it's the airport. There's got to be, is there one in a picture? Usually I think about that beforehand and ask.
Everybody's going to call up a flag image on your
Oh, I know. Well, we'll see what he.
It's okay. Everybody want to look at my computer?
What?
Yes.
You've got something?
I got one on there.
That works.
Oh.
That's very good.
All right, everyone. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody has to pay $1 for the rights for the flag.
Thank you.
Stand at the door.
That's right.
Poor Patrick, he's probably still running around looking for him.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, anyway, while we wait for Patrick and before we call the roll, we need to congratulate Mr. McCullough down at the end of the table. I understand there's light at the end of the tunnel that you could see, so.
177 days, 14 hours.
There we go.
Yeah, but who's counting? No, thank you for that.
Yeah, congratulations.
It's
That's,
been a great run, and I look forward to my final year with the board in the county. And then to retirement.
all right. Good for you. Good for you. All right. Well, here he comes and he will. There's our
You guys are super resourceful.
flag. Yeah,
I was like, we could just pull one up.
well, we were just discussing Mr. McCullough's upcoming retirement, so we're ready then to call the roll.
And I think we ought to be also giving Brandy a congratulations also. She's moving on to, we've been out in the paper yesterday.
Oh, I missed that.
Yep. So this will be as well. Whereas Mr. McCullough, we have almost a full year remaining with him, hopefully on the commission. Ms. Schaefer, we certainly will be sorry to see you go. From a staff perspective, I'm sure all the commissioners share that too. So.
Don't be strangers.
She's been incredible to work with in the county accomplished. She's been really.
I didn't want to work with anyone else after Paul was leaving, so.
Where are you headed?
I haven't made a decision yet. I think I'll look back at the private sector and I looked at a couple of different options, but I haven't formally accepted anything yet. It's been a great 4 years. I've enjoyed it, but just a mom in a small town and a small town manager, I talk about traffic on back to school nights. I talk about trash at happy hours. So I just need a little something different. I think Warrenton going through COVID was a great experience. I was the right person, the right time, helping them to make some decisions and do things. And now I feel that they're in a favorable position, and the council and the businesses and the citizens, and I think it's perfect timing. I timed it perfect for right after the budget's adopted. July's a slow month, and then August, and then election, so seems like just good timing. That's the urban planner in me, I guess, to just plan everything out, but I'll miss all of you, for sure.
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something on behalf, they didn't ask me to say anything because I didn't talk to them, but on behalf of the council, what a visionary we had to steer us through really some very tough times. The whole idea of a rollout. I mean, there's so many things, you can't list them long enough, which were Brandy was the genesis of, and so we very much appreciate her extraordinary service and wish her extreme well. And I think with her set of skills, if she gets back in the private sector, who knows? And she may be competing with Mr. Musk for.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Ashby, Mr. Butler,
Here.
Mayor Catlin, Mayor Coiner, Mr. Crozier,
Here.
Mr. Curry, Mr. Deal,
Here.
Ms. Donahue,
Here.
Mr. Eggertson, Mr. Hively,
Here.
Mr. Jackson, Mayor Lamar, Mr. McCullough,
Here.
Mayor Roby,
Here.
Ms. Schaefer,
Here.
Mr. Simple,
Here.
Mayor Sisson, Ms. Taylor,
Here.
Mr. Voorhees,
Here.
Mr. Weekly, Mr. Woods.
Here.
You do have a quorum.
Okay, terrific. Okay, you've all taken a look at the agenda. Are there any changes or additions or anything anybody would like to make? And if not, we need a motion to adopt it.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Time for public comment. I don't believe there's any public here. Have you heard from anybody that wanted to?
We did not have any prior to you.
Okay. All right, we can move on then. We do have a presentation today. As many of you may know, the Regional Commission's Michelle Edwards currently serves as Vice Chair of the Chesapeake Bay Program's Local Leadership Work Group. So today, Michelle's going to share information from the Local Government Guide to the Chesapeake Bay, which is focused on the importance of healthy watersheds to local economic development, public health and safety, infrastructure maintenance, and education. So Michelle, thank you.
See?
I'm going to spin around here.
Yeah. Okay. So this presentation that I'm going to share today, again, was developed by the Local Leadership Work Group. It's the first in a series of modules, but it's not that they all have to come in order. You can certainly pick and choose and view these in any order. They were designed specifically for local elected officials and local administrators. They can also be used for staff and interdepartmental training, staff that normally wouldn't work with environmental programs. The first one in the series is How Your Watershed Works, which we're going to go over today. That is a very high level watershed 101 type approach. Some of the other ones look at policies and laws of the Bay program, such as the Bay TMDL, benefits of tree planting and tree preservation, benefits of land preservation, economic benefits of all these programs, stormwater management and flood resiliency, and finally, green jobs. So any of these presentations are existing that are available for you to either go through on your own. You'll see these slides are very text heavy because that's how they were originally designed. Or I can give a presentation to your local governments or to any of your local committees that you would feel that it would benefit for this. We're also talking about potentially giving the stormwater presentation to this body as well, or potentially one of the other ones if you prefer. I'm going to start out with a very brief video.
Oh, we don't have audio.
It's just music, so it should be fine. I can hum if you want, but yeah, it's probably less moving without the music, but ooh.
Voiceover go with this?
No, there's just music, so you're not really missing anything, but yeah, I apologize that we don't have the audio, but okay. So as that video expressed, the bay is more than just a body of water. It is our entire watershed, meaning that a drop of water that falls into any of those land from New York all the way down to Virginia is going to make its way to the Bay watershed. So thus, the choices that we all make in the watershed affect the Bay. These are some of the basic statistics about the Bay, and I will tell you that all of the statistics that you'll see in this presentation, that the notes pages in the presentation explain where all these statistics from, so if you ever have questions, you can refer back to that, because some of these are quite surprising. For land use, the Bay is 58% forest, 22% farms, but as we all know, those numbers change rapidly as we sprout houses. 9% is suburban and urban, and 11% of other development like golf courses or parks. The Bay is 11,656 miles of shoreline, which is more than the equivalent of 4 trips between Annapolis and Los Angeles. There's 51 billion gallons of water flowing into the Bay daily, and there are 18.2 million people living in the watershed. The Bay is very unique compared to other estuaries in the country. It is very shallow with an average depth of only 21 feet. The positive side of this is that the shallow waters provide important habitat to all of those creatures that we like to eat, such as blue crabs, oysters, juvenile fish, and waterfowl. Unfortunately, less water means that the Bay cannot handle pollution as well and is very susceptible to it. You see here a natural system in areas with less development. Precipitation is able to be filtered through the soil and the plant roots before making its way to the waterways. Whereas in developed systems, we have what's called impervious surfaces like rooftops and parking lots, creating stormwater runoff by preventing the water from being absorbed into the land, and thus washing out all those pollutants like nitrogen and phosphorus, sediment, and bacteria to our local streams and eventually to the Bay. All these excess nutrients from our urban runoff fuel the growth of algae. The algae then blocks the sunlight and covers the grasses so they can't grow. The underwater grasses are really important to the Bay ecosystem because they create ideal habitat for, again, all that seafood that we like to eat, such as spawning fish, the eggs of the fish, and also blue crabs. And some types of algae are also toxic to people. So that's all well and good to hear about the Bay, but what are the benefits to your local communities? Well, let me tell you, when we talk about protecting water quality, first and foremost, you're protecting the water in your local streams, because that water then goes to the Bay. So by protecting your local waterways, you're protecting the Bay. Clean water and a healthy watershed are critical to economic development, public health and safety, infrastructure maintenance, finance, and education, and we'll describe all these benefits as we go on. A healthy watershed attracts businesses, creates jobs, and provides safe drinking water and food for our families, which supports our communities. First and foremost, the economic development angle. The fisheries in the watershed are worth millions of dollars a year. You see some of those just for fishing licenses. We get $80 million a year. And it shows that in Virginia, $998 million a year in just fishing licenses, supporting almost 10,000 jobs. There's also promotes, besides fishing licenses, increased tourism, visits to local businesses, hunting revenues, breweries use clean water, and of course agriculture. Clean water can raise the value of a nearby home by up to 25%. What are the benefits of trees? As we've said, the trees of the Chesapeake Bay provide $22 billion in forest projects, $24 billion in ecological services such as flood control and wildlife habitat and recreation, which our region relies on, certainly. Homes near natural forest earn $10,000 in property premiums, more than homes near golf courses or parks. Well-placed trees can also save in cooling costs and heating costs by a marked percentage. Customers spend more time and 11% more money in well-treed areas. So there's a lot of economic benefits to our community. For example, Frederick County, Maryland saved over $360,000 by leaving trees and wetlands undisturbed in a residential subdivision through stormwater management benefits and reduced clearing and grubbing costs. There's also health benefits of planting trees, such as reduced urban heat island effects. They clean the air and the water. There's also reduced crime that's been documented in areas where trees are planted. And of course, more exercise through recreation. Then we get into stormwater management. There's been a push over the last decade or so to use what's called green infrastructure instead of gray infrastructure. Gray infrastructure is basically, your cement ditches, your old school stormwater ponds, man-made structures. Green infrastructure, however, are things like grass swales, rain gardens, bioretention facilities, converted wetlands, constructed wetlands that use natural systems to filter that stormwater runoff. This is an example from the city of Lancaster in Pennsylvania that saved over $160 million by pivoting from gray stormwater control to a green plan. You can see this building, for example, harvests rainwater and is turning it into potable water, as the gentleman told us today. There's lots of examples. We have a NIFWIF grant with Fauquier County to do a converted wetland in Faukier's high school and use that as a teaching moment for school children. So this infographic shows you 1 inch of rain on 1 acre of forest or wetland produces 750 gallons of runoff versus 1 acre of parking lot produces 27,000 gallons of runoff. So it's a huge, huge difference. And that runoff can flood neighborhoods, stress storm drain systems, and increase runoff into and the erosion of your community creeks. So it is quite a big deal. Even one street tree can intercept 760 to 3,000 gallons of water per year. So you don't have to do a lot to get quite a bit of bang for your buck. Education benefits as well. 96% of parents support environmental education, and most of your budgets, 40% they estimate is direct expenditures at the local level are invested in elementary and secondary education. So it's important that you consider environmental education as part of your curriculums. And that is certainly, these are all examples from the region, these photographs of environmental education projects that some of your communities have been doing. So fostering that is very important, and it is something that parents want to see more of. And these are some examples. The bottom one is from Richmond, Virginia, taking a school by storm. Is a schoolyard retrofit project at a middle school. It reduces stormwater runoff using several methods, including a rain garden. The project was funded with $200,000 awarded by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and it's also a cute little attractive project for a middle school. The other one is an aquaponics lab that was funded through in Pennsylvania. But there's lots of grants that are available. NIFWIF grants are certainly something that we can help with, that we've used in the past to do projects like this. There's a number of grants through the state government as well. There's lots of potential also in privately funded grants for things like this. And finally, what other things you can do? Well, certainly, as we've talked, reducing impervious surfaces in your jurisdiction, especially through municipal projects, things like the impervious pavers, the pervious pavers, the porous pavers at Culpeper Airport is a good example. There's lots of ways you can have these co-benefits by both beautifying your community and also getting an economic benefit from green infrastructure projects. Planting trees. Friends of the Rappahannock has been doing a number of tree planting in parks within the region, and certainly is looking to do more. It's at no cost to the locality. Also, as we've talked about, investing in environmental education projects and leading your community through grant projects such as National Fish and Wildlife. and sharing this information with others in your community as well. We can post these presentations on our website so you can link to it. And if you would like to learn more, there's a number of resources that are in each of these presentations, as well as a glossary or terms that you don't quite understand. But there's, as I've said, there's a whole suite of presentations like these that are available for either your staff to give or myself to give to your local governments or your committees.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for?
I just have a comment. I'll probably have rotten tomatoes and snippets. All of this is very good. It is all important for us. I think it was 3 years ago, there was a bus tour. I'm going to say that it was basically sponsored by the lower Rappahannock River counties, for lack of a better way to describe it. We are evil people up here. We cause all the issues. We are the root of all problems. All of these grants are also wonderful, but the one thing everybody needs to remember, each of us are paying for every one of these grants because we pay federal taxes. So all that money is coming from us and coming back to us. There is a balance, and the economic advantages are touted as being phenomenal. Try building a single-family home as an individual now. It's going to cost you a fortune, and the government has gone too far, in my opinion. So I just want everybody to keep in mind all the positives here. There are negatives that if we go too far, there is not an advantage. So that's my 2 cents on all show.
Thank you for that. Anybody else?
And thank you.
No, that's
Thank-
okay. I mean, I will say that all these presentations do not push additional regulations. They just list tools that you can use
Right.
voluntarily. It's all intended to certainly be voluntary and educational. It's entirely up to you. how you want to
I
use
understand.
things, but yes.
I do have a question.
Yes.
We've been, as far as I know, even before I've been on the board, been talking about just pay for years, and there's been projects happening for years. I haven't really seen, are we seeing a difference? Is there anything
Yes.
happening?
There is a website called Bay Progress that you can go to, and I can forward you the link certainly, that lists, that charts exactly how much progress is being made. I don't know how many of you had met Sue Horgan, the secretary that used to be here previously. I recall her saying that she was a little girl growing up along the Chesapeake Bay, and she remembers how cloudy it was when she was growing up, and she can see the difference just in her lifetime of the difference with dolphins coming down. There's a marked difference. Is it perfect? No. I mean, I've been doing this back from when I worked at the state in 2000, and I can tell you that yes, there has been a marked difference and improvement. But yes, we've sunk a lot of money into it as well. So, I mean, whether it's worth it is completely, a value judgment on your own personal behalf. But there is definitely a market improvement.
I think one of the other things, if I could jump into there too, is that because there are like six or seven states included, Virginia is pretty often cited as one that has done a lot to impact, the Bay in terms of cleanliness and things of that nature. Some of the other states do not do as good a job and do not take it as seriously. And so a lot of times you sort of say, okay, well, Virginia's this close to meeting its goals or whatever the EPA has defined its goals as, whereas other states
And that's
choose
where a
not
lot
to.
of the problem is Virginia actually has gone above and beyond, but we suffer because Pennsylvania hasn't. So now we have to make further improvements and reductions in everything going into the Bay, and Pennsylvania is not. So, once again, I'm all for our environment. I want everything taken care of. However, like many other things, you have multiple jurisdictions or multiple states. When you're the shining star, they say, oh, okay, well now, water and wastewater treatment plants, we're gonna squeeze you even tighter. Any of you that run one knows you can't get squeezed any tighter. It's as tight as it can be, but they're going to make it worse. Because Virginia has done so well, we're going to impose more upon them. So that's where a lot of my angst comes from. So
I mean, Maryland is probably the one that's done the most. Virginia is kind of middle of the road. Pennsylvania, yes. They've discussed sanctions. It comes down to politics, whether the federal government is willing to impose those sanctions. But I will say, I'm a Pennsylvania native, and I've certainly gone back. You can see the difference in their local water quality. I mean, if you want dirty streams, you can have them. It all comes back to, if you protect the water quality in your community, you're going to see benefits in your community, whether it's, tree planting in your parks, or whether it's your local water quality in your streams. I don't want my kids personally fishing in some of those streams back where my parents live, but that's just me. You are all the ones making the decisions. These are just examples and tools that you can use.
Very helpful. Thank you. Okay, so has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from the April 27th meeting? They're all here in the packet. Is there any changes requested of that?
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, got a motion and a second for approval of the minutes. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now we move on to financial reports. So Patrick, you've got the year-to-date.
I can, and I've got the, on the screen is just the cover memo for the FY22 financial report. That is through May 31st, so about 92% of the fiscal year. If you recall, in April, the commission did approve and adopt an amended budget. So through that, through the first 11 months a year through May 31st, there's an error on the cover memo. We've got about 92% of revenues in and about 85% of expenses. That is pretty good. I think we'll probably be on revenues with that amended budget. We'll probably be 98, 99% by the end of June, and on expenses we'll probably be lower than that, we've been pretty consistent on that lower spending for the last several years. But I think we'll probably be in the 94, 95 range with payroll and everything else for June. Really nothing other there. The only thing I did note, and I would note, is that Terry Sneeden and I, at the end of each fiscal year, if we do have that surplus, our internal administrative pattern has been to move that surplus into our reserve funds with Virginia Investment Pool. We will report back in August as to what number was deposited there, and then if the commission prefers to bring those back out for something else, we can easily do that. But that's been our pattern in the past several years of any surplus at the end of June. So I'm happy to answer questions if you have them on the current fiscal year's finances.
Anyone? Questions on the financial report? All right. Why don't you, while you're on a roll, go over the director's report? Sure.
Just a couple highlights. We've got several staff reports, so I won't try to duplicate anything that's coming up in staff reports. I did want to let the commission know that we had one position turnover, our coordinated entry specialist, since the April meeting. D'Angelo Alexander, who was in that position just since December, resigned in mid-May. We filled the position pretty quickly, and I'm pleased to share, for those of you that have been around since 2016, 2017, Dee Anderson, who was sort of the first person in that position, has since done some other things with Foothills Housing Network, has worked in case management, but she was interested in returning, and so we're excited to have her back. She started last Monday, so I think that will be a big help just to have some stability in that position, which I think Dee will certainly bring. We're advertising for two positions right now. One is an AmeriCorps Vista member for a one-year term to work with Foothills Housing Network, and also for a regional planner with GIS experience. Our budget right now for FY 2023, as proposed, that regional planner position can be entry level or someone that's got a couple years of experience, certainly if you know anybody, please send them our way. Would love to have that filled sooner rather than later. You may have seen in your email inbox, we put out a Regional Commission newsletter in mid-June. We had taken a break, really coinciding with COVID, from sending that out, but have relaunched, and I think we're going to try to do that again every month. Just brief updates on Commission programs, events, meetings that are coming up, things of that nature. If you didn't get it, or if you overlooked it, fine. If you read through it real quick, fine. But if you didn't get it and you didn't notice it in your inbox, please let me know, and I'll make sure you're on the list there. Come back to that. Commuter services, just after we've talked a bit about this, but our commuter services program with gas prices going up, and also with the coming out of COVID restrictions from the state, you're going to see may have already seen some advertising and outreach from commuter services. They've been at Madison Business Expo and the Culpeper Fest since the last meeting, and we are restarting advertising for that. So again, when gas goes above $4 a gallon, that seems to be the tipping point for a lot of people calling and being interested in seeing what their options are for ride sharing or carpooling or van pooling. I've been in communication with U.S. Economic Development Administration, our SEDS grant. While I don't have a contract in hand or an agreement in hand, I have what they refer to as a non-binding letter of commitment. So we're planning to move forward with that. I anticipate in July we'll have further details from them. We've responded with some follow-up requests from EDA staff, but I do anticipate receiving that funding in FY 2023 and beginning that process. And then I'm sure they'll mention in the roundtable, but I want to thank Mayor Roby and Mr. Woods from the town of Orange. They invited me and many others, including Mr. Voorhees, to attend the town of Orange's sesquicentennial celebration on June 12th. They also provided us, and on behalf of the commission, I accepted this commemorative coin, which I'll pass around. It's really interesting if you read the back of it, talking about the kind of the way they developed it, but it's got a great imprint of the depot in town celebrating their 150th. So was a really great event, even though they had to move it from Saturday to Sunday. I thought everything went really well, and again, thank you both for inviting me on behalf of the commission.
Thank you for coming.
And the last thing, I just want this presentation is in your packet. I'm not going to go through the entire presentation. I just wanted the commission to be aware that, and actually today at the State Water Control Board, there's a discussion on proposed amendments to water supply planning. And the real reason I'm bringing this up is because historically what DEQ and what the Water Control Board have called regional water supply plans could be met at a county and incorporated town level. And that's how all the counties in Planning District 9 have done it, as well as the town. So each of the 5 counties and the towns within each county have what is called a regional water supply plan for that county. The new regulation, and this comes from legislation in 2020, requires a regional plan which is set out at a larger area. So for your benefit, and you can see it on the screen here, our regional commission boundaries coincide with what they've called the Northern Piedmont region. So that's beneficial from my perspective, it's not lumping 5 of our counties in with different regions. But what is being proposed is that there will be a process to take the local water supply plans and turn them into a regional plan at that, what they call Northern Piedmont or the PD9 level.
Out of curiosity, with Orange County, especially our eastern end, is there any thought process given to incorporating Spotsylvania County
into
the regional? Because bottom line, we've got a development that if we do something, it's going to have to include Spotsylvania County as part of our regional plan.
Right. So to my knowledge, the way they developed these was, I would assume DEQ staff and others kind of said, here's these regions we're going to put together. There is, because of legislation carried by Delegate Weber earlier this year, there is an opportunity for a locality to say we want to be placed in another one. My understanding would that would have to be Spotsylvania probably making that request, or any of the counties represented here in PD9 if there was another region that you wanted to be placed in. There is a process to do that. Otherwise, it will be at this level and with those regions. There's not from the commission standpoint, there's not a set role that has to be played. It's not saying just because it's coincidental with your boundaries that you'll play that. But I think what DEQ staff has sort of said is that, you know, they would encourage, especially, and I would think for someone like our organization where the boundaries are coincide, that we're encouraged to play a role. I imagine that a lot of this will be state-driven, and that our best role would probably be taking a compendium of comments from each of yours and making sure that anything that any of our localities wants to bring forth, that we're able to do that and provide that amplified voice. It's possible that we could take on a larger role, but we'll have to see when they eventually get to this point of what that would look like. So, like I said, that presentation is included in your packet. You're certainly free to look over it. We'll follow up after today's Water Control Board meeting. There's going to be a public comment period, really just to talk about the regulations, not so much the requirement for the regional planning effort. So, but wanted to make sure that I shared that with you all. So.
Any questions?
I just have one follow-up on that. Does this replace the local?
My understanding is it will. I mean, technically you could probably continue to create your own local water supply plan. I think from the state level, from the law and what's in the code now, plus the regulation, that they're going to look at this and say this is what we want a water supply plan to be at this regional level.
Did attend the PEC meeting the other day in Warrenton, and the woman that was presenting about the trees and plantings and all that good stuff basically said that the state has a goal, and if we're not meeting the goals, the mandate's going to come through that we're going to have to do certain things that we're just asking people to do right now.
Right.
Is there somewhere that information is accessible so that we know what the downside is to not be planting trees and everything?
Michelle, I don't know if you heard that question, but it related to related to the tree planting, if the statement of if we don't meet our goals for tree plantings or other requirements for the bay, I would assume that there would be some other, sort of more forceful.
And I'm just wondering if we know what force it means. Do we have anything that says if then this happens?
Not for the water supply plan, that's really a separate issue.
But for the bay program and stuff.
Mainly, my understanding is it's going to be permit holders. So that is really the stick portion that the EPA and the state have is to hit MS4s and wastewater treatment. Now the state, however, had passed a law that if they PMDL was not met, they could then require certain ag plans to be mandatory for certain size farms. That can still shift. It may not end up ever getting implemented essentially, because I think it's at the discretion of the governor or something along those lines. But yeah, I mean, it's going to hit permit holders.
Okay then, moving on, we have staff updates. Update on the regional housing program is first up.
You've got just and this was not in your packet, but it's just a short, kind of 2-page summary document. So a lot of the work, as you all know, in February we had, we've gone through the PDC Housing Development Program, where we have funds from Virginia Housing to support developers, nonprofit developers in the region with their programs. Staff's continued to work, and we've got an agreement drafted up that the law firm that we have the contract with is reviewing and making final comments on. We anticipate the first of those agreements in, if not late this month, then early July, and then the rest we're continuing to check in with the partners that were selected and approved by the commission in February. Sort of in parallel to that, and recognizing that we completed and the housing study was adopted last February by the commission, but then this housing development program came in and we didn't really have an opportunity to kind of do anything with the housing study or any of the recommendations. Jennifer Little on our staff has been meeting with developers, nonprofit developers, local government staff to try to figure out what role the commission should be playing, not only in follow-up to the housing development or the housing study, but also more something that's in our wheelhouse rather than the housing development program, which was sort of standing up from scratch with the funding that Virginia Housing provided. So I'm going to let Jennifer kind of talk through just her process with that, but what we've got on the screen here is just a kind of a set of where we think we can be most helpful, and this is from local government staff, and again those meetings with them. So Jennifer, what have I missed, or what do you want to highlight for?
Well, I think probably the most important thing is that because this is a new process, a new plan, and a new opportunity for us, we've been trying to take a look at housing from a larger, high-level regional perspective, and the housing study, with its timing, and then being followed by the grant that was offered to us from Virginia Housing, has just been an amazing opportunity to continue to work on that. With that being said, the engagement process, as I've been talking to our local planning departments and talking to our service providers, I've been trying to get a better sense of where housing development could serve our larger populations, where it was most needed, and how, what kinds of opportunities we have to address some of the housing needs throughout the region. In talking to the planning departments, we've come to realize that what they've really been asking for more than anything is a development of tools and resources and materials to help them identify different solutions that could work towards complementing their comprehensive plans and the directions that each of the communities, each of the localities want to go to meet their housing needs. And so this chart on if you'll turn around, hopefully you can still hear me, but this graph right here shows you I guess you could say an overview of the outcomes of what I've been hearing from feedback. The planning departments has asked first and foremost if we can have some form of a networking and roundtable opportunity, ideally once a quarter, to where we can sit down and talk about the different issues and challenges and solutions, and really put together, brainstorm together to see what we can do to solve some of the housing challenges that the region is facing. The next three bullet points, effective data set presentation. I've been getting wonderful feedback. I've taken the housing study data and reworked it and put them into charts, hopefully that are legible and more comprehensible. And I've gotten a lot of thumbs up. Keep going forward, keep bringing this data together so that it makes sense, so it's relatable. And then I mentioned the resources, tools, and materials. So we're looking into different types of housing models for diverse and missing middle housing that could be applicable to different areas within the region. And Patrick, does that go up just a tad bit more? Yeah, there you go. Okay. And the last bullet point, the program enhancement and development. Many of you are familiar with Foothills Housing Network. I'm sure you've heard pieces of information on it from time to time. It has come to my attention that while many of our, I'll say local government staff that I've interacted with is familiar that there is a program, a lot of them don't quite understand which household populations are being served through that program. And so some of the feedback I received on that is to look further into that and really come up with some comprehensive data sets that make sense, so they can get a clearer picture of who's being served and who's not being served through that program, and start to identify some of those gaps. Each one of those points are expanded on the three bottom areas there that covers essentially what I just said. Is there anything that I just missed?
No, I don't think so. I think what the main kind of purpose of kind of giving this update is really to say that, you know, we've revisited what the housing study said. We know that there's a need, and we sort of knew this when it ended, that we would need to come back and be able to update the data to make it useful. We sort of confirmed that, and I think the role for us that we see is exactly what Jennifer highlighted is, you know, providing that networking opportunity, you know, sort of as the commission does for you all as board members, but providing that for local government staff, for planners, something that would be focused on housing, but would probably be broader than that. I think housing would be a main topic, but this would branch into land use, transportation especially, is sort of the way we're seeing it. And then the support for when you're doing a comprehensive plan update, or if you're looking at a housing chapter or something else, a housing subcommittee at a locality, being able to provide that support there. So that's sort of the role that we're seeing for the commission and for ourselves as staff. Wanted to make sure that sounded all right with all of you before really pursuing that further, but that's sort of what we've seen as where we can be most effective, given all the things that we've heard from, you know, local government staff and others that we've talked with.
Questions or comments or anything? Mr. Deal?
I will say, the study was done before the interest rates have taken off, correct? So now we're at 6%. It's only going to get worse, I think. And the rental market, I don't know about the rest of your jurisdictions, but I know how Culpeper is, and I'm assuming that all the jurisdictions around us don't have any supply for rental units as well. And it's only going to get worse, I think. I mean, because people, if the rates keep going even from 6% to 7% to 8%, they're going to get out of the single-family housing market viewpoint and have to go into rentals. And workforce housing and affordable housing is going to be so much more needed. I think that I looked the other day, and since 1970, the average lending rate has been 7.77. So we may never in our lifetime get under 4% again. That's my opinion. And I just think workforce housing and affordable housing is really going to be a priority for all of us. Because I know there's no supply in Culpeper right now.
We have 3 units in home share.
Exactly.
That's countywide.
And it's not only affordable, it's workforce and above workforce. I mean, it's going to be almost an emergency situation, I think.
Well, the timing of this is certainly appropriate then. I mean, I think it's a good approach to sort of brainstorm with the regional planners, because we do all share kind of very similar problems, and then we have some that are a little bit different that I think each locality could help one another out with. So.
And the lucky ones that have been fortunate enough to get a house for under 3%, I don't think they're ever going to sell those houses. I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, it's all about the rate versus the house. 2 3/4 or 3%. I mean, if you're smart, you're not going to ever sell those houses. So it's going to be a demand situation there for houses that are 300,000 or less and rental units, I think. Even more so than it is now.
You're probably right.
I'd like to add a comment. I think that this progression is going to make what used to be attainable housing unattainable. And we shouldn't overlook the low and very low income cohorts that you thought might have been able to get into something, now can't find anything. I mean, I have a neighbor right next door to me. The availability of housing that's HUD standard is 0. And so when we look at this, we should keep in mind the entire spectrum of housing needs, even if it's temporary and or transition.
I think that's, if I may, Mr. Simple, that is, I think where we feel as staff that we're well positioned just because of the work Rebecca presented in April on Footnotes Housing Network. I think Jennifer and Rebecca worked really well together. we also recognize that, we're not going to be able to change everything or anything like that, but at least to connect those dots, I think we're important to the conversation at minimum, so.
My thought, I don't prolong this, but my thought is that as we look into zoning policy, where we create incentives and all these are important efforts to address a problem. If our zoning emphasizes single-family homes, we have got to start looking, and part of our comprehensive plan does that. ADUs, other types of things, more creative solutions, and it's a slow boat to China, because what happens is, and by the time we get to what we thought was a solution, interest rates have gone up, and it no longer is. So I think it's a very difficult process. Thank you for moving us along.
Anyone else? Thank you. Okay, so next up, we have a report on the first year of the Farm to School program from Liz Bailey.
Yep, is the remote over there?
The clicker is over there, Liz. I don't know if it'll work or not, so.
Okay.
If not, you can just direct me what to do. So.
Yeah, let's see if it does.
Been through the first
Oh, it does.
year.
Awesome. Yeah, so I believe I've met, or at least been introduced to most of y'all in the room, but if I haven't, my name is Liz, and I'm the Farm to School liaison. I started just under a year ago in August of 2021, so now I've kind of been through like a full school year in my position and almost a full calendar year, so I thought it was appropriate to kind of talk to y'all a little bit about what I've been up to this year, especially because a lot has changed since I first presented to you guys in October. I've gotten a lot done since then, thankfully. To start off, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the most significant use of my time, which has been conducting taste tests in schools. The idea of these taste tests is to introduce students a little bit to the idea of seasonality. Virginia has a harvest of the month calendar that highlights a different fruit or vegetable every month. So like May was strawberries, June is cucumber. And to give students a chance to try these different fruits and vegetables, learn a little bit about why they're good for them, how they grow, and those kinds of concepts that are really important, especially at a young age when students are forming their food preferences and their like ability to try different things. I've mostly been focusing on elementary school for that reason. That's been what the different counties have been interested the most in, but that's also, in my opinion, the most important time to get students into trying different foods, because that's kind of when they start to form what the kinds of foods that they like. And so I started off this program primarily by like going into different classrooms and talking to small groups of maybe like 20 to 40 students, where I give a little lesson and then they would try something that I made in the cafeteria. And since around like November of last year, I started trying to scale that up and doing more school-wide taste tests. So I would order like a more bulk quantity of food, like 20 or 30 pounds. Oop. There we go. Oh yeah, I think it just logged out.
Let's see if we can get that.
Yeah, I think it should be okay. Oh no. Well, that visual isn't super important, but I would order like a bulk quantity of something and then prepare it in the cafeteria and then go through all of the different lunch periods. I started doing that in around the end of November in Orange County, and I've since kind of expanded that to the other counties. This was kind of inspired by a program that Fauquier has, such as their Fauquier Fresh program, which stands for Fauquier Reaching for Excellence in School Health. They're really well established. I think they started around 2016, and they do really regular taste tests in schools. So I have been able to shadow them and help them out with that, and that really inspired me to try and bring it to some of the other counties. I manage it a little differently because it's just me, and they have a small staff of program staff and volunteers, but that's been really successful so far, and I've really enjoyed doing it. I think doing the kind of school-wide taste test has been really useful because that allows me to reach a little bit of a larger amount of kids rather than just going to a classroom, and that way I'm not really encroaching on teachers' time as much, and it's pretty easy to talk to a lot of students because all they're really doing is eating their lunch. So since then, I've done about like 90 to 95 visits to different schools in all 5 of the counties, and I've gone to over 20 schools, which has been really exciting. Some of our districts are a lot smaller, like Rappahannock, so I've just been going to a really thorough one elementary school, Rappahannock Elementary, but some of the districts are much larger, so I've had
more schools to go to. This is just a picture from, I think it's a newsletter that Rappahannock County does of one of our spinach taste tests. So this just kind of gives you a little bit of a visual of what it looks like. That's me and Jackie Tiedrick, who works there. We went and we cupped a bunch of little tiny, like 2-ounce containers of spinach, and then we gave it out to the kids during the lunch period. This is like one of the earlier ones that I did. I think this was like probably like one of the first ones. This might have been, I guess this was like the end of September or early October. We did like a little classroom demonstration where we like tried seeing what kinds of vegetables sink and float, which was on the VDOE website. I wasn't really sure what they wanted us to get out of that, other than like maybe volume and density, which is a little hard to grasp for very young kids, but they had a lot of fun, and we were able to talk about bell peppers, which was the harvest of the month for September when I did that, and it went over really well. That was in their action-based learning classroom.
Is everything raw, or do you roast them or put sauce with them or anything?
Yeah.
Just raw?
I started out doing mostly raw, but I've been kind of trying to expand that. With some of them, like sweet potatoes, you have to cook them. I try to make it like as minimally processed as possible, just so I'm not in the way of like the cafeteria staff as much, and also so that it's a little bit easier to model, especially if like the kids or the teachers want to try it at home. But it's really dependent. Like sometimes if it's just like tomatoes or something, I would like cut those up and serve them maybe with like salt and pepper. But sometimes I'll make something a little more elaborate, like a salad. But
What was the reaction from the kids in general about those different things? Did they like them or kind of go,
yeah,
no,
I would say like for ones that are like hard to get kids to like kale, for example, probably like 50% of them will try it, and of the 50% will like it. I've done some ones where it's like a lot higher. Like I did like strawberries and waffles for the month of May, just because it was like fun and everyone likes that. But for vegetables, it's a lot less. But I usually also try to bring out like a whole bunch of kale or a whole head of lettuce or something too, to kind of like make that connection of like, oh, this is what this looks like. And try to like encourage them, like you can just smell it or you can just like lick it if you want to get an idea of what it tastes like, because you might actually like it. It doesn't always go over great, but
I know with my kids, raw,
yeah.
Vinegar on spinach or kale or something
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. But roasting veggies, my kids will go, just the same thing. You know, a little olive oil and roast them, the exact same thing. Just to let them know that whatever they thought when they ate that raw vegetable, there are other ways
Yeah, I think that's good.
of eating it, other ways of eating it.
Yeah, I try to do that too, because sometimes I'll bring something to them and they'll be like, well, I know I don't like that. I'm like, well, have you tried it this specific way? And then they might actually like it that way. But it depends. It's definitely with like green vegetables and like cruciferous vegetables and things like that, it's a harder sell. But as a whole, I think I've been impressed at the willingness of some of the kids to try it.
You also have the octopus.
Oh yeah, I wish I had a picture of that. I have. Yeah, I didn't have the octopus, but it's really hard to see that in the middle there's like a butternut squash guinea pig. So in Rappahannock County, Jackie Tiedrick is very creative, and we've been doing like different animals with the fruits and vegetables, and that one went over really well. We did a bell pepper like octopus, so we like put the bell pepper down and then different slices of bell peppers and did olives for the eyes, and it was really cute. The guinea pig was just like literally like Sharpieing on 2 dots for eyes, and then we cut like little triangles for ears, and like they really liked it and really wanted to like pet the guinea pig, which was, I got a lot of mileage out of that. But yeah, we try to make it fun, and I try to, if there's staff that want to be involved in the school districts, I always like welcome help, but I try to be as self-sufficient as possible so that I'm not like putting additional strain on people, but it really depends on how much staff are interested in being a part of it. Yeah. And so then the next big thing I've been doing this year is data collection. I think I might have talked a little bit about it in October, but I conducted a teacher survey just to get an idea of what kinds of farm to school programming was already happening in the different school districts, as well as what kinds of interests that teachers had in expanding it, both in the kinds of topics and the form that kids would be learning in. But the other big data collection activity that we did was a procurement survey of the school nutrition directors. This was really important because one of the funders for my position this year in No Kid Hungry was really interested in figuring out ways to increase the number of lunch purchases that were happening in the school districts. So we did an initial survey in, I believe it was like September of 2021, and then we followed up again in April to see how or if things had changed. And we actually had some really interesting results. This is a graph that shows the changes in the number of students purchasing lunch. The highest change was Orange, which had over an 80% increase, and then all of the counties but Fauquier had an increase as well, but the rest of them were a little bit more moderate. And Fauquier only had like a small decrease in the number of students purchasing lunch, which I think may have been due to we had two different people fill out the survey, one at the beginning of the year, one at the end of the year, and they approached it slightly differently. So I'm going to figure out if that was actually a significant decrease or if that was just kind of a data collection error. But this was really interesting. It would be nice if any of this was to do with my position encouraging kids to eat lunch. I would assume it mostly has to do with the universal free lunch policy that was happening during the 2021 to 2022 school year, as well as just maybe students who had previously been virtual coming back to schools and inflating some of those numbers a little bit. But it was a good thing to see. It was a little heartening to know that more students are purchasing lunch and that like more kids are getting fed. It's always a good thing. So we were glad to hear that. It will definitely be interesting to see in the next year if we decide to survey again whether those changes will remain the same or decrease. I'm sure a fair amount of you have heard that the USDA has like repealed that policy, so there won't be the same kind of universal free lunches happening. Some counties are able to qualify based on just the number of students that qualify for free or reduced lunch. I was talking to Linda Blair in Orange, and she has done a tremendous effort of getting most of her county to qualify, except for Orange High School. I think the rest of the county qualifies, which is wonderful. But you know, it's still a significant amount of students who aren't going to be able to access free lunch anymore. So hopefully things will not change too drastically, but that's definitely something that I'm anticipating will change in the coming year, which is a bummer. Because as I'm sure most of you guys know, a lot more families are being squeezed now than perhaps were at the beginning of the school year. So it's unfortunate that this is happening at this time. In terms of changes in local procurement, this isn't the complete data yet. I sent out the survey in April when the school nutrition directors were pretty busy. So I haven't heard back from Orange or Culpeper yet on this specific question. I don't think they had the numbers yet. But at least Fauquier and Rappahannock reported a fair amount of increases in the amount of money that they're spending on local food costs. It's hard to kind of see Rappahannock's bar graph, and I wish I had the exact numbers for you, but they really pumped it up. They actually started a partnership with 4P Foods, which is the local food aggregator in the region. So they're now spending a fair amount more on local food this year. And Fauquier as well has, I assume because of changes post-pandemic, they've also increased, and Madison has stayed pretty much the same. But they were pretty significantly invested in local food before this last year as well. In terms of just like other activities I've been up to this year, I've been doing kind of regular digital outreach to schools. I do monthly Harvest of the Month flyers that go on school nutrition websites. I've one page of one that I did for May that's on the right. I've also just been regularly checking in with school nutrition directors and offering myself as a resource for any help that they need, and also giving them some space to talk to each other and interact, which has been really helpful, I think. I'm also a part of the Virginia Farm to School leadership team this year, and I've been helping them out with planning some of their producer trainings for the fall, as well as the Virginia Farm to School conference, which is going to be in October. Yeah, so that's pretty much all that I had. I'm excited to continue all these activities for next year. I'm excited to keep doing the taste tests. I think they were really helpful. I've had a lot of like trial and error of having to learn how to use cafeteria equipment, which is significantly different than home cooking. I've had a lot of opportunities to figure that out. So I'm hoping to continue primarily focusing on these kind of school-wide taste tests. I've found that they're probably the best use of my time. I reach the most students that way, and it's been really well received. So hopefully doing that in more schools, reaching a broader amount of students, continuing to do digital outreach. I'm hoping to learn how to film some videos this summer through Fauquier Crash. They do a lot of social media, and they're very adept at filming. They have like a whole wonderful camera setup that they're letting me use. And so hopefully I can at least do maybe like quarterly videos to send out to parents and to students that maybe aren't in the schools that I'm going to. And then just continuing to support other commission activities that are adjacent to Farm to School. Like I've been learning a lot about Purely Piedmont and Free Rivers Trail this year, our agritourism and local food marketing programs, and helping with outreach for them. So yeah, I'm excited for next year, and thank you all for having me. And I also have room for questions if anyone has any questions. You want to go first?
Sure. I'm wondering if you're doing anything in conjunction with the culinary programs in the schools. It seems like it all kind of fits together.
Yeah, that's something I would love to reach out more about. I haven't really yet. I guess the closest thing is I've been working with like the Fauquier County Transitions Program, which is like for 18 to 23-year-olds, and they learn like a lot of cooking and nutrition. It's for adults with developmental delays learning life skills. But I would definitely like to see where I could help out with that as well.
I know Mr. Strew is the culinary instructor in Rappahannock County, but I believe every one of the counties have a culinary program.
Yeah,
so-
I'll reach out to him. Absolutely. Yeah.
If I walked up to the cafeteria line and saw that, the salad with the strawberries and the dressing in, I would be psyched. Pretty good.
Yeah, I really liked that one. It was at Madison Primary, and they're real little there, so it was a mixed bag.
Hopefully they weren't old enough to realize that they only like chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff, and this is great. But I would encourage us to look at that cost piece and maybe try to also figure that per student or per dining student to figure out, because there seem like some pretty big disparities there in cost that we might want to either understand better or encourage our cafeteria food procurement people to network a little bit more to understand where costs are or where opportunities are, either in procurement or bulk purchasing or something, because Madison definitely is not spending more money on food than Orange. That makes no sense.
Yeah, let me see that.
I think it was local food.
Well,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
if it's just on locally produced food, then that's a completely different problem set, and kudos to Fauquier and Madison for buying a lot of local produce, and we need to get with the program since we grow a lot in Orange.
Yeah, Orange was doing it.
Yeah,
They were putting it into the school, into the menus all the time.
Yeah,
But it's showing low, so that whole, I want to know more about that and the math and what that's supposed to show and what our goal is, and
That's local.
yeah,
so,
that's just.
so the definition is local food, meaning out of the local economy.
Yeah, well, we looked at pretty, yeah.
However, the school itself defines it, because we told the nutrition director, so it was how their particular school district defines local, which generally is, the region or it could be the county, but usually it's the region or the state.
Yeah, I think it was variable how they individually defined
So to
it.
make it useful, we probably need to get everyone to agree on a common definition, so we can norm this, and then.
Yeah, I think the problem we were thinking about when we were thinking about how to word that question is like they are only reporting it the way that they think of local food, and it would be, I guess, a big ask of them to look through their numbers and change it based on our definition.
Yeah, but if you have a goal that the region wants to see,
Yeah.
and you say, look, this is, the regional commission, we're big on this, we have a lot of folks here from all the local governments, we'd like to norm this and see where we're headed.
Yeah.
I think what this just reveals is this is an area for exploration. And, if we don't get common definitions and common math around it, we'll just be saying stuff that won't have any meaning.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think you've identified a great issue to work on.
And I think that,
I will say it does have a number of different challenges that she deals with, and that would be something we can talk to you about if you have interest in it. But yes, they, given their school makeup and what they have available to them, they have more challenges than has.
If you want to talk to us offline about what challenges means,
Yeah.
And you're just trying to say that people aren't playing ball, but you're being diplomatic, let us know. We're more than happy
No,
to.
not on a staff level, no. It has to do more with federal procurement policies.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's all very, very
Yeah,
complicated.
it's complex, but yes.
I think it's so for
I do think normalizing the data based on per capita or serve or something, and here obviously that number is probably high because of the number of people in that
Yeah.
school system compared to Rappahannock, for example. Normalizing those may make the data more comparable between.
Yeah, I think
Like a per
that's
pupil
true.
analysis would be
well,
more fair, look at the chart. I was just gonna offer that one thing that I think has gone really well for us is our potlucks. And, so in the weekend power pack that goes home to kids who meet those qualifications, needing weekend meals to go home with them in their backpacks, we insert a certain amount of dollars, that are equivalent, to cash at the farmer's market. And so the kids get to come and buy produce and do things. We've done that for a couple of years. It's an evolving program, and you can pick them up at the local library. You can grab them, and we even have a couple of residents who shop for their neighborhood. She'll come with about $30 and buy separate bags, and it's just for produce and fresh food. And they can take that back, and so that's a grant we got through the PATH Foundation, and then Paul and I work with the schools and then through the Warrenton Farmers Market to offer that, and we've seen pretty great success with that. We also ended up, after a couple of years of trying to figure some things out, putting a unique identifier on it. So at the end of the year, we could see where the majority of the money was going home and then where it was coming back into the market. And that data wasn't what we anticipated. We actually saw a lot out of the Lee district coming into Warrenton to shop. So I'm tracking those dollars, seeing who's using them, but that was a PATH Foundation grant. And then the other thing we did with the farmers market was also the 3-to-1 on the SNAP as well. So that's some of the other things we did to kind of engage the kids on the weekends and also give them a chance to access food. And we have Kids Day the first Saturday of the month, and that partners with our Fresh program and education, and then the potlucks and buying at the market. So that was just another add-on to some of the things going on in Fauquier.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's an amazing program.
That's terrific.
and I'd also say with Fauquier County, I mean, more students, but also because of the Fauquier Fresh program in schools, they have a lot more capacity in terms of their staffing that's doing things. Liz has found a really good niche with supporting them and a lot of things they're already doing, whereas in the other 4 counties, it's a lot more. Liz is connected with the nutrition director, and then she's out there being the sole face of this. So I think that's, just another reason there. But I agree with the per capita
As
piece.
Brandy said, I think that our numbers are higher also because of the grants that we've been getting out of the PATH Foundation.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask
Which
separately.
other
Is it adjusted for the
localities
grants
don't have.
that we get? Because we get quite a bit going into those programs.
Yeah, I don't think it was just purely asking them the number of
So
dollars.
I just think looking at the data, it's just a factor to show.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something I'll dig into a little bit.
This did exactly what it should do, which is it prompted a bunch of good discussion around this issue to figure out, all right, well, what else do we need to know? Where are we going? What's working? What else do I want to know? So
Yeah,
I'm glad you put it up here, and we can emulate Fauquier and Warrenton. So it's cool.
Yeah.
Well, we ought to have a discussion too about, we have a Fauquier education farm that produces a load of produce. A lot of that produce goes to local food banks, but I know that they produce more than the food banks can take also, and so there may be opportunity in that area to spread that food to other localities in PB9, if that's something that's possible. And that was the discussion between, obviously, the counties and then school systems and then the educational fund, that fund.
And we kind of pitched the potlucks as also economic development for the farmers. If you think about it, it was, when we tracked it all at the end of the day, it was $32,000 that was cash that landed back in the farmers' pockets. So at the end of the week, they turned their little potlucks over to the town, and then we write them a check for that money. And so it was an extra $30,000 that might or might not have been in the market, and so the farmers are seeing a return on that as well.
Rappahannock County also has a potluck program.
Yeah, I think we started it with like Fresh Bucks is what we called it, and then we merged it to Potlucks and then.
So it's highly replicable for those that have farmers markets.
Well, it's been a very good first year, I think, for you, and we do look forward to seeing what else becomes of this.
Yeah.
Certainly some good ideas you've got to walk away from here.
Yeah, do I need to do anything with this?
Nope, you're good. Thanks, Liz.
Excuse me. Okay. Thank you again, Liz. So back at the February meeting, the commission requested staff to review and present amendments, excuse me, to the bylaws related to quorum for the commission. We did the first reading in April, and now we can act on this. Does anybody have any questions or further discussion about the amendments?
Or do you need a refresher?
Anybody need a reminder, or are we all here? About the quorum issues, okay. Well, if there are no questions, we need a motion for action on the adoption of the amended bylaws.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the amended bylaws? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, well, that was easy. Okay, new business, Patrick. Item 11A, the smart scale applications.
Yep, so for those of you that have been, so for those of you that have been around for a while, Smart Scale, if you remember, is the way that VDOT and the Commonwealth Transportation Board allocate transportation funding. If you recall, the commission as a regional entity is eligible to submit applications, up to 4 applications for each cycle. This is the 5th round of funding with applications that are due on August 1st. We've had a request from Fauquier County for one project that I don't know, it's not guaranteed that it will be submitted, but they asked us to submit a pre-application, which we did. And now, because the application is due, the full application is due by August 1st, this is a procedural item to get that support from the regional commission in the instance that that application goes forward. The project that would go into the commission's account is at Route 17 and Route 245 in Fauquier County. Specifically, it's the solution there. There's a couple of solutions that the county and VDOT are still looking at, but the solution would be the split intersection, which would shift southbound traffic on Route 245 down to Old Winchester Road for a different access to basically to prevent the left turns from going from 245 onto 17 at that intersection. My understanding, and Mr. McCullough and Mr. Butler, if you have comments, I'm certainly happy to hear them, is that there was a public meeting 2 weeks ago. I think in general, there's a lot of questions. When I talked to Adam Schellenberger, who's the chief of planning for Fauquier County, indicated that they don't know that they're going to go forward, but this is really to allow that to go forward if the county does decide to submit that.
I have a question on the resolution itself. It actually is directed just to one of the 2 options they're considering in terms of its language.
Correct.
Right. I'm sorry, I was out of the meeting.
That's good. So it's directed at the one. The county, under their own set of 4 applications, submitted the other option. So if they end up going with the other option, which is the restricted crossing U-turn, that the county would submit that, and we would not submit this. And then there also is a second resolution, and that is for all of the projects that are under consideration to be submitted from all of the jurisdictions in the region. The requirement is not all of these require commission support, but some of them that meet a quarter of statewide significance benefit for for Smart Scale do require. Our historical process has been to include all the projects that have been submitted by local governments just to show that support, so you can see the the listing there of the 4 from Culpeper County, 3 from the town of Culpeper, the 4 from Fauquier County, including the one just referenced, 3 from the town of Warrenton, 1 from Madison County, and 4 from Orange County.
Questions, comments? We don't have any. We need action on this particular item to adopt the resolutions of support for the smart scale applications.
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Now we move to 11B, a request for intergovernmental review related to the Middle Mile Fiber Project.
So this is, and I asked Chair Taylor to, if we could have this on the agenda, not because there's any action required, but the commission, the intergovernmental review process at the federal level, and also that the state uses mostly through Department of Environmental Quality, goes to regional entities, and, you know, officially, if there's a request for those intergovernmental reviews, they send them to us. We don't get them very often, especially for projects. We get a lot for wastewater treatment plant, discharge permits, things of that nature, which we don't bring to the commission because there's not really much reason to. But in this case, there was this project, which does have a regional impact for the Mid-Atlantic Broadband Middle Mile fiber connectivity, which would run through Orange County and into Culpeper, terminating, I believe, close to the Culpeper Airport, and then primarily along Route 522 through Orange County and southern Culpeper. There's no required response from the commission. Certainly, if the commission wants to offer its support, because this would benefit, you know, broadband in the region, then it can. But my intent for bringing it to you was just for information purposes, to make sure you were aware. We actually also had a separate one that was specific to Madison County for wastewater treatment plant expansion, which I talked with Mr. Jackson, Mr. Weekly on. So just so you know, the process is if it's a single jurisdiction's impact, such as the Madison County one, my policy is to reach out to the commissioners serving that jurisdiction. If it's one that has a larger than single jurisdiction, then I'll bring it back to you as we've done here. So I don't have a lot of comments on the project. We definitely did review a request that that Mid-Atlantic Broadband had submitted for funding through EDA several years ago. I don't recall if we offered support. I know we reviewed it. But in this case, if there are questions, I can take those back as part of the review process. If not, then we can pass it by.
They may actually do it some year.
It has been we've talked about this for quite a while, so.
Okay.
I doubt there's going to be a need for it by the time they get to it.
Okay. All right, well, if we're good with that, then we'll move on to item 11C. Again, this is information. There's no action required. But this is a draft personnel manual that staff has developed. And Patrick, go over that.
Yeah, I'm going to be brief here too. I do want to thank Terry for all of her work. Some of you that maybe were here when I was promoted to the director position, I remember probably talking early on about, we need to update our personnel policies, and here we are 6 years later, and we've got them. So largely thanks to Terry volunteering earlier this year and saying, yeah, I could take a shot at that. From my perspective, the last time, just to give you information, the last time the commission had a real thorough update was 2001. There's been some very minor changes. This is a complete starting from scratch, primarily using existing personnel policies from a couple other, our existing ones with policies that we had, along with templates that New River Valley Regional Commission in Radford and Plan RVA in Richmond have, primarily because I know both of those organizations have reviewed theirs and do a good job of updating theirs. So in terms of legal things of that nature, I felt like those were good ones to work off of. There are some cases where we've had policies adopted because of grants, like a whistleblower policy and some other things that are incorporated here rather than writing up completely new things. My goal is the draft was shared with staff last week. I've asked them to review and provide me any questions, concerns that they have. Certainly, I'm not asking all of you to read the 80-some page document, but if there are things that you know of, either from local activity that you've done in personnel policies or anything else, I'm happy to sort of review where we are. This is really, updating some things that were very outdated and giving us something that is frankly, for staff and my own use, much more useful than anything we've been doing for the past 5 years. So, again, I've asked for staff to review by the end of July, so that by the August meeting, we'll have a revised version of this for you to consider.
If anybody has particular interest in reviewing that whole document, or at least parts of it, and give any feedback to Patrick, that'd be
Something
great.
that's, we've had discussion in the past, something that's been greatly needed to be updated, quite honestly, what Terry has done is very good, and makes it a lot easier, just like the previous document, to do annual updates if needed. This was a mountain to even think about, so thank you for the work, because I think it'll make it a lot better for the staff, just even on a daily basis, to have a full understanding.
And the other thing I would say is the last 5 to 10 pages are a telework policy, which right now we did not have a telework policy in place prior to COVID. With COVID and the COVID-19 policy that the commission passed, we allowed that. So we're sort of in a gray area. This firms that up much more than we're currently at. So.
Sure. All right, any comments at this time? Okay. Well, now we've got it's June after all. We've got the 2023 budget in consideration. It was presented in April, so we've had some time to give it some thought, and you could give us any comments or anything before we move to adopt this.
Sure, thank you. In difference to past years, the draft that was presented in April is what's in front of you today. We've not had any changes in revenues or expenses of note that would lead me to feel uncomfortable with what was presented in April, so I've got the same one. Again, the preliminary revenues are just a little bit over $2 million. That's largely because of the Housing Development Program spending, the pass-through funding for that, the NIFWIF grant, that was pushed into this fiscal year, and just some other primary project spending. It does include cost of living increases for staff, along with implementation of the pay plan, a couple of changes related to the pay plan that was approved in February at the time. As I did in April, the other thing I just want to call your attention to is on the kind of budget chart. I mean, where the revenues and expenses are balanced. No donation to reserve is anticipated at this point, but we have a lot of 5 listing revenue sources that are outstanding that we anticipate hearing back from in the next 6 months. So as with most years, this budget will be amended at some point during the fiscal year because of the expectation of the SETS grant, like I mentioned, from EDA, along with a couple of the other grant applications that we put in there. So I feel comfortable with the budget as it is right now. As we shared, the primary increases are, we've had a health insurance increase of 8.5%, which we're absorbing, along with what the current 10% contribution from staff on single plans, along with the 1/3 of the contribution for anybody on a dual or family plan. That's the first increase on health insurance that we've had in probably 4 years, so we've been doing pretty well there. VRS remains really low because we have a surplus in that. So some of these things, those are just, I raise those just so that you're aware that in the future that may change and that may impact budget beyond that. So I'm happy to answer questions, but again, I feel like this is a pretty solid budget for where we are, and I'm pleased that it didn't change from April.
Any questions, comments? Anybody want to move to adopt this?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of adoption of the FY 2023 budget, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, terrific. All right, there's no need for a closed session, so now we reach our regional roundtable time. Mr. Mayor, would you like to go?
Well, we finally start our work on our airport in July. We're going to take up the old runway and regrade it, and make it 50% wider, in full length, and put down a new basin, pave it. Do the same with all of our taxiways, so it'll really be the first time that's been done, because when it was built, we had a, I guess, a clay or a natural, for the 30s through the 50s. Then when they paved it in the 50s, they had no real money or program, so I think they got enough money to just pave the land as it was, so it was a little rolling, to it. And so it'll all be taken up and started over. And we hope to hear something about our plan for our park, which runs through the center part of town, connecting our Verling Park and swimming pool to the fairgrounds. About tripling the size of our park. And our new pool, if we get the grant, we'll have about $3.5 million to do something. And we should hear in September. So 2 big projects going on in a little town, and the rest, everything else is just kind of normal. But
Bob, I just want to tell you that Debbie Kendall and your economic development person did an excellent job with the presentation to the Rotary yesterday. It was well received by everyone. They gave an excellent report of the town. Kudos to you all.
good,
Nice
excellent,
job.
good, thanks,
Nice
Mark,
job.
appreciate it.
I love driving through and seeing all the flags on the lining the roadway.
Small towns should be small towns.
I want to talk to you about how you got that in.
We gave money. Most, we didn't spend any town money for the airport. Almost no money for the $3.5 million park project. Begged, borrowed, stole, and grants. So if you're broke, don't not do things. Do them anyway, somehow. Because we don't have any money.
Rappahannock County is still trying to protect Rappahannock County. Mr. Ockrey and the Rush River Commons project broke ground last week, technically broke ground. And what that will be is, I think they've got 18, and they're calling them affordable housing. I think it's more for the school teacher, deputy kind of income level. And he's going to have a new location for our food pantry, and there's all kinds of other ideas, but those are the 2 biggies. And it'll be a first attempt to approve or disprove the need for housing in Rappahannock County. So I'm really looking at it as a project that will tell us if it sells out before it's built. We'll know that there is a huge need. If there's a battle, there's a little concern that our seniors are going to want to downsize and just move into these houses in the town. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. We have hired the Berkeley group, and they're working with our planning commission to really look over all of our zoning to try and make sure that everything's as tight as it can be. When you have judges coming in from Loudoun County to make decisions in a rural county, it shot the light bulb off in my head so bright when we were told that what's a view shed? How do you define a view shed? Why does it matter what you're doing? That was when it was like, okay, we need to really make sure that our comprehensive plan and our zoning is defendable in court. And then what else? Broadband. We're waiting to hear the plan from All Points Broadband and the Shenandoah Regional
Northern
Commission.
Shenandoah Valley.
Northern
Regional
Shenandoah, yeah.
Commission, yeah.
They still haven't finalized with the state. The state's holding up something. I don't know if you know what's going on, Patrick, but
I've heard the other PDCs that are body grant recipients just having all sorts of issue. My personal read, not having the body grant here, is that the ramping up of the staff at DHCD in that broadband office has happened pretty quickly within the last year, and a lot of them are pretty new, and a lot of questions have to flow up the chain.
So we are waiting to hear what's going to happen, in what order. Obviously, there's 20 counties, I think, All Points got. So that's wrapping.
Let me say one more thing before you start, Jim. Since I've got Orange County right here, I just talked about the fundraising and the grants that we needed for what we do. We're a small town. And the big fundraiser weekend that we had to start off raising money for our park pool, it started off with Orange County giving us 6 figures. And really, making us get on our way to make something magical happen. So I just wanted to thank the Orange County folks while I had opportunity.
Absolutely. What was that grant you were talking about? Did you say body?
Body.
Some counties get that. Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Negativity. Just one comment on that. We do operate the Orange County Broadband Authority, doing business as FiberLink with over 2,500 customers. We're still expanding, still moving on, and it's a homegrown operation, plain and simple, because for whatever reason, maybe it's because I'm on the Board of Supervisors, they don't like Orange County, and I can understand that, but we don't seem to get any of those funds. So, Mr. Voorhees, I'll let you tell anything good.
Well, Jim's right. I mean, we have satisfied customers. That it's fiber to the home. I mean, that's the gold standard. And you know, if you don't get free money, you do what you can. So continue to expand that. We're divesting ourselves of our Comcast connections to serve our governmental buildings and school buildings, and so FiberLink's providing that. We're hooking up the main library and the wilderness library, and we'll be needing to do Gordonsville so we get through the streets without tearing too much up. So that's ongoing. We were proud to host y'all at the last meeting at our public safety building. I think since that time we learned that we did receive a National Association of Counties NACO award for that project. Not just the building, but the sort of full integration of our public safety organization along with our IT and our radio project, all in that sort of same building. It's really just dynamically changed, you know, how we provide public safety communications and work our different supporting agencies together. And that was demonstrated well yesterday in our dry run or dress rehearsal, whatever, for our North Anna drill process where EDM comes in and we have to pretend that the plant blows up or something like that. So that whole thing went well in our new facility. So paying dividends and happy about that. It's still working well. The big new initiative for the board is recreation. We're jealous of some of y'all having added some new facilities. I know Culpeper right to the north has some neat things going on, and we're excited about trying to spread that creativity across the county east to west. And so I think our next board meeting, not the next one, the one after, we're going to try to workshop some more ideas with the board who've expressed strong support for a variety of recreational projects across the county. So that's our biggest new initiative. We still are trying to pursue career and technical education, a path forward for that. But the school board has only recently selected a new superintendent. Our current superintendent retires at the end of the month, so we'll probably need to wait a little bit of time till the new superintendent can get on board before we can really get that project back on some sort of path to success. But those are kind of the big pictures.
Chasing Fauquier County and getting safer grants. 8 additional.
We did fund another paramedic ambulance in our new budget. We hope to get some safer grant money to help pay for that, but we'll do it one way or another, and we're pretty pleased with the high level of service we're able to provide. And the board really supported our pay study. We got a lot of information from our neighbors here in this room to help support that. And I think our workforce is pretty including adding, we've now added school resource officers to all of our schools. And that'll start in the fall if we can hire everybody we need.
We're in the same boat as you guys are with all points, just kind of waiting, but we were kind of told it was also waiting on the budget once the governor signed
projects to start to roll along a little bit. County Fair is coming up July 13, 14, 15, and 16, so if you're active up, we'd love to have you stop by that. Still very excited about the momentum of our farm markets, both in, I attend the Remington market because that's where I live, and then the one in Warrenton pretty regular, and our local producers have seemed to be doing really well with produce and proteins, and just I urge everybody that has farm markets to continue to support them as much as you can, because during COVID, we relied on these local producers because you couldn't get stuff at the grocery stores, and our challenge still remains that getting stuff processed. The biggest processor, the only processor in the county, is just so backed up. I mean, the farmer that I help, he's already got his steaks booked for next year, and that's all he can get, no more, no less, unless someone drops off. So that's still always a challenge. It's something that the Ag Committee and the Farm Bureau that also sit on that board are working on. And I think that's all I have. All you got anything else?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. First of all, we have leased the old visitor center from the town of Warrenton. Thank you to the town. And we're repurposing that into our employee health clinic. Laurel Ridge Community College, their Fauquier branch, their new science building located on our campus opens this fall, and we're having a groundbreaking ceremony on a new trades building, which will be in August. The renovation of Cedar Lake Middle School is beginning to go forward, and we're now planning for the renovation of the two Fauquier Bank buildings that are in 10 Courthouse Square in the middle of Warrenton, which we've now purchased, and we'll be moving some of our offices and departments into to allow us to renovate our current courthouse to move our general district court into that building. So a lot of renovation and a lot of construction going on. So that's all I got.
Mr. Dean.
Quite a bit. But I know y'all get tired of me bragging about Culpeper all the time, so I won't say a whole lot today, but it's good to see Chris. Haven't seen him in a while, and appreciate you inviting us over here today. It's quite a complex. And I know you and I started out about the same time serving public service about 8 years ago. And so it's good to see you. Piggybacking on what Louisa has going on, or Town of Gordonsville, pool park, Chris and I are working on a pool concept, very preliminary for Culpeper, but we don't know how it's going to go. Of course, it depends on town council and board of supervisor member buy-in, but it would be exciting because we get hit up all the time for a pool, even with all the other great stuff that's going on in Culpeper. So we're working on that. We did just learn that our state park for our 2 battlefields was just recently approved and ratified by the governor. So Rainy Station and Cedar Mountain will become a state park, which we're glad to see. And we're having a high growth coalition committee, and members are coming to Culpeper at Old House Winery on June 30th, which is a couple weeks from now. And the main topic is going to be affordable housing. So if any of you all want to come, it's not too late. I think many of you probably received an email about it. It's going to be a great topic. There is a small fee with the accommodation. There's going to be lunch. I think it's going to start at 10 o'clock. It's going to be a really good conference. People from all over the state or region is going to be there. I think Chris is going. And Patrick, I think you're coming, right?
Jennifer's going to be there.
Jennifer, okay.
Yep.
Should be a lot. Should be probably 75, 80 people there, I would think. I don't think it's too late to sign up. Just let me know if you need some help with that. But it is a pretty important topic right now. Old House is great. It's one of the best wineries in the region, I think. It's a good place to come and talk and have lunch. And
Green ribbon's not too bad either.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, just let me know, and probably have to sign up by today or tomorrow. That's all I have for you.
In Warrenton, as I mentioned before, we were working through our pay study, so that has actually been awarded and has started. So we look forward to getting information from all of you, and then also happy to share that when we're done. If it's useful, if you're included, then you can kind of reverse back into that. We are looking at our second Citizen Police Academy. That's something the police chief started and really grew in popularity. We have over 50 people that we have to reject each time now, which is tough. So we might look at other ways that we can get them involved and incorporated. And we actually have a Citizens Academy graduate that we are making an offer to join our police department. So we're excited about that program. The town council's been working through some ordinance updates the last few months. So we did a pretty extensive effort for about a year on property code enforcement. Really kind of to some of the points on housing needs to at least meet basic standards. And Virginia surprisingly has some really low standards for property code enforcement, just really valuing, as they should, personal property rights. And I understand that, but it makes it really difficult when trying to deal with a bad offender. So we've adopted some codes similar to Middleburg, and those passed, and we are working through that process as well. Also working through an emergency management ordinance. This is something kind of coming out of COVID and the pandemic and having some of our own concentrated emergency management programs also position us better for grants and other things, just some stuff we need to get in place in our town code. So council's currently got those on advertisement. We'll look to adopt them next month. We're also in final negotiations on a potential purchase of a new park, and we're still working through the final stages of our CDBG grant on septic remediation. So we made it through the first round, got more money, setting it back up for the final application. So a lot of community outreach, knocking on doors. Surprising to me how little we knew about where septics were located in town. Our data was very sparse, so at a minimum, we've gained a real understanding of where things stand. So that's kind of the logistics side of everything going on in Warrenton right now.
Right. Well, we'll cover just a few things. We kicked off First Fridays in June. That was a success. It's our main goal, just to try to get our businesses to stay open a little bit later on Fridays, and hopefully that'll encourage them. And they did different things like they had a wood turning demo, some music, face painting, just the general things to get people out. So that seemed to be going well. We're also working on a Write the Record type program where we're looking at those untold stories that untold or undertold stories, and we're trying to put some plaques around town to document things like Dr. Barber and Fishtown and some of those things in the downtown. And I think that will ultimately tie into a larger project as we do our downtown parking lot project. On the residual property, we have a park that we'll be building there. And the thought of that was to kind of tie that to history and an all-inclusive type history. Not taking away from any of our history, just adding to it where we can. Our Route 522 Highway Safety Project, that's been a project that seems like it's going on forever. We awarded that project, had a non-responsive contractor. We knew if we went further, it was going to turn into a nightmare. And even though here we are during this high inflationary period, we held our breath and canceled that contract, and then it took VDOT months and months to allow us to advertise the project again. We did that. It was supposed to be 100% federal paid for project, and we were very concerned it was going to cost us a bunch of money, but after negotiating, we have to pay $16,314 out of a little bit more than a $3 million project. But
That little bit of change seemed to make me not happy, so hopefully council will approve that when we take it to them later, but they turned out a lot better than I was afraid it was going to turn out. I figured we had several $100,000 and we were going to have to pay for it to get out of that, a lot more. So, other than that, we're waiting on a lot of permits, kind of watching the paint dry with Norfolk Southern and DQ and go down the list. And while we're watching that, we're trying to do some utility relocating and things that kind of start the project, trying to keep them moving. That's I guess the other big thing is we have a project out on the streets now for a wastewater plant upgrade project for replacing our digesters, replacing our centrifuges, as well as a bunch of work in our headworks. We're estimating that about an $8 million project, so we're still holding our breath, hoping that it comes in somewhere close to $8 million. But these days and times, who knows what bids are going to come back. It all depends on who you get at the table and whether you like it or not. All I can think of right now.
We also have the standpipe project that's going on in 57 times. Right now, we've got 35% engineering done. This week, we've done soil samples and other things. But this week, we're lowering the reservoir that's underneath the standpipe 6 feet so that you put a boat in there and do an inspection on it. We may split that into 2 projects because we have to make sure the standpipe operates and there's enough funding to do that. The reservoir really has a extended life. It's not in that bad shape, but we would like for them both to be kind of together. But if we have to break them apart, we'll break them apart. Along with that, we put the liquid feed system at the water plant on hold just because of the price. Because that much, I'm not sure that it's worth it. But there's no reason it should cost 3 times what the value is.
Craig, when you're doing this project, is it going to be totally offline at any point? I mean, in other words, how do you put a new one up?
No.
Don't you need that up there? How does that work?
No, we'll bypass the whole standpipe reservoir.
Oh, okay.
And the water plant will work 24/7.
Okay.
To let that provide pressure for you all to. Excuse me, the other projects, we have sidewalk projects that going on from Sheets to Food Line. The sidewalk is been in for a while. The pedestrian crossing is delayed again. It's another 2 weeks. Keep getting it 2 weeks until we get it. It's 2 weeks out. I'll put it that way. We have on Round Hill Meadows, the housing projects that's up there. We have 19 houses under permit that are being constructed, and we have 4 on South Allen Street. They're also being constructed right now, or the land's being cleared for. The other projects that we've got is paving the old town lot. If y'all know what that is, that's so the parking can be used for there and for the sport, the high school stuff, parking. We intend to connect Hilltop, that's in this year's plan, which would enable the fire departments and those to be able to get their vehicles through Harbor Drive and get them back around, which is a huge problem up there. And Spicer Mill sidewalk, which we also have planned for this year. The one on going to Food Line cost so much that I had to take that one out of it, use money to combine them just to get one of them done. So that's where we are right now. It just, prices are going terrible.
So everything's expensive, so we threw a big party and spent a lot of money. So, we had originally scheduled our sesquicentennial celebration for June the 11th. It was supposed to be massive rainstorms. There were so many moving parts to this event. Well, June 11th, guess what? It did not rain at all, but that's the way it is. You do what you have to do. But we had a wonderful turnout. It was a good event. We had it in Taylor Park in the middle of town, celebrating the charter of the town in 1572. So we were very happy with the day. conjunction with Juneteenth, our African American Historical Society in the county worked with the town, also the ODA, and we have now a very lovely interpretive park at the intersection of Church and Chapman Street. And this was a piece of land that was just there. It was ugly, honestly. There was nothing on it. It was very ugly. And this is also at the crossroads there of the streets where it used to be the African American business area of the town. And what we did in the park, through the help with the Orange County African American Historical Society, is they helped get the grant to build the park and put the interpretive panels in. And the town is letting them use our land in order to have this park there. And it really is lovely. If you come to Orange, you really should. If you come down 15, just take a left off and come down to it. It's really nice, very nice. And we're hoping that it might help open up that area of the town, because it is a real kind of drab area of the town. It really is. So it's a little bright spot there, so that maybe things will open up from it. But that was well attended, and that area needs that spot, so I'm glad you got it there.
Thank you. I guess this is my first, maybe my second formal report. I'd like to talk a little bit about the challenges we face as a town. Since 1988, I was struck, by the way, by how easy we adopted this budget today compared to what happened in the town over the last several weeks. And part of the reason is that we have met for the first time a problem that we could violate our 50% rainy day fund, general fund balance policy. Historically, the town currently has one of the lowest real estate tax rates in Virginia. It used to be among the highest, and over a period of decades, the rate has slowly descended. Where now our revenue from real estate is really no more than what it was in 1988. As accordingly, we have relied more and more on BPOL and meals taxes, and one of the big debates was increasing our meals taxes to 6%. And there is a group on the council who are quite conservative with regard to any kind of tax increase. And so it became an open debate as to whether or not we would have adequate revenues as we went into this year. We will, but just by the skin of our teeth. So our problem is what's going to happen next year in light of a potential recession. These are all the things the town council will have to take up in a strategic session later this summer. And thankfully, it is really one issue or another, but we are losing an absolutely talented town manager, and now our job is to replace her. If you guys have any ideas, let me know, because it will be a difficult slot to fill. But she has left us with some really highly talented employees, particularly in the finance department and in the police department. And so her legacy will be that she has given us the tools by which we can address some of these challenges. The second big issue that we will be facing is Amazon has come to town. And for those of you who have already dealt with this issue, we will be seeing it for the first time. It has a tendency, what comes along with Amazon is Dominion, and I was a respondent in the 500 kilovolt Dominion case 2006 and 8, so I know a little bit about Dominion. And Dominion's strategy is generally, when they come to town, to try to figure out how one set of residents can be unhappy with the other set of residents. And that's how it works out from time to time. Our objective is to be able to come up with a way of resolving, of obtaining a data center without the consequences of above surface 230 kilovolt lines. That's going to be a challenge. And it's because when we are thinking about best use of this property, Amazon came to us early and presented a very tantalizing proposal. But now we are visiting the idea of what comes along with all that. So when we think about these things in the future, we have to be conscious not only of what's best for the town of Warrenton, but for the county and all its residents as well. So this is going to be another challenge for us. And these are all you may be facing or you are facing now. Many times correspondence we can have about how you've dealt with it would be greatly helpful. I have a couple of good things we had a wonderful Juneteenth festival. In fact, it showed how a festival could be on Main Street. It was well populated, mostly by our African American. And I'm sure many people came up in Culpeper, came all around to show their spirit. And I sat with Dr. Weaver, who's the president of the NAACP Fauquier branch, and there were smiles ear to ear on the street. I think that's about it for me. I want to just say how sad that we're losing Brandy. I know she's going to go on to greater and better things. And when you put the word private in front of the word sector, you begin to think that, well, maybe this will help her, move her. As you read the paper, she cares deeply about her family and their future security. And I think that is what mother's objective always is. And we wish her the best of luck in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for that. As far as continuing with Culpeper, I think Mr. Hively covered most everything. I will say the Planning Commission, Town Planning Commission met last evening to take a look at a site plan for the Laurel Park development off of Route 15 south of town. Phase 1 is what we were looking at, which is 176 houses in that first phase, a mix of single-family homes and townhouses, single-family detached and townhouses. So remains to be seen how things proceed with that, whether that gets full build out or not. We're hopeful. This is always kind of my favorite part of this meeting, because just looking back over the years that I've been in this region, my family moved here 22 years ago. Just listening to what's going on in all the surrounding counties and in our own county, it's just amazing what has been done by the staff and with the help of the elected officials. I mean, you guys have done amazing things. These towns and counties they have so much more than when I first came here, but we still maintain, I think, the rural and small town character that I know we all love. So you guys are doing an awesome job. I'm always very impressed with that. And I'd like to say thank you to Ms. Schaefer for everything you've brought to the commission. Your input's always very valued, and wish you the best of luck. Patrick, do you have anything you wanted to?
The only thing I would say, and this goes back to Gordonsville and the airports, is that if you ever have a chance to camp out at the Gordonsville airport, it's a thrill. So I did that with Cub Scouts back in, I don't know, late April. So maybe not quite as busy out here, but there was definitely some planes going off, and good place to camp. So.
Oh, yeah. We host a Central Virginia scouting event at the airport every April, so that's done that a number of years.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else before the commission, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Second. Okay. We are adjourned, folks.